And what was hilarious to me is that my mum is one of those people who, you know, in Monty Python, the guy that's got like no arms and no legs, and he's like, it's a flesh wound. That's my mother. She could be missing a leg and she won't take a paracetamol.
Yeah.
And when I said to them, I've been diagnosed with ADHD, I thought they'd be like, oh, you know, nonsense. And they both just went.
Today we are navigating media, menopause and motherhood with colour book connoisseur and radio producer Jennifer Crichton. Warning, you might leave this episode wanting to build IKEA furniture or even buy yourself a Lego set.
Okay, welcome back to our second episode of Fast Brain Women podcast. I'm your host, Danny, with my lovely co-host, Lorna. Say hi.
Hello.
And we are joined today by the lovely Jennifer. Please give us the honour, introduce yourself, and let's get stuck into some juicy ADHD conversation.
Hello, I am Jen Crichton. I'm a journalist, broadcaster, radio producer, ADHDer, I suppose.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Welcome to we got it right. We invited the right person. And you feel very familiar in this setting with microphones in your face. How did you get into that?
I'm not so familiar with the cameras. I wasn't warned about those. That's that's new for me. You've got stuff that we don't have.
Only the best for you.
Well, this podcast is all about winging it, from how it was conceived to how it is executed on a weekly basis. So not telling people that we're filming it is just something we were experimenting with this week just to see.
I'd have brought a lipstick, I'm not going to lie, but apart from that.
I mean, it's wearing well. It's the end of the day and looking cracking, I have to say. And actually, this is probably, full circle, because I think you and I have both been victim to Jen. I would imagine you've had a similar experience. What are you doing tomorrow? Would you like to come on the radio and talk about this? So,
Yeah, I think winging it is kind of just the audio way, right?
Yeah.
Certainly my way.
I don't know if there is another way.
Well,
I don't want to know if there is another way, because I seem to just be okay with that scenario.
Yeah. There's nothing more exciting, is there? Sometimes you don't have to worry about, what am I doing next week and all the factors. It's like tomorrow, I can think that far ahead. So for me, it works anyway. So tell us a little bit about your career then, because, there must be pros and cons, as there are with all careers, of realizing that you have ADHD.
Yeah, I mean, it's quite interesting, I guess, that the odd occasions, I mean, I've been a journalist since I left university. I've been in journalism for 20 odd years, but the odd occasions where I've been in kind of adjacent roles, like, between jobs, a radio station closed down, I went and tried PR and various things where I had to actually sit at a desk. Not good. Doesn't work for me. And it's strange now looking back, knowing that I have ADHD, to go, actually, I kind of found myself into the perfect job, really, because I think the thing with radio is that 30 seconds is a long time. And, if you've got ADHD and you struggle with boredom or with sitting still and doing long and monotonous tasks, radio is a gift, because, we do 3 hours of live content a day. In those 3 hours, you'll maybe have 6 to 9 guests. They're all new people that you get to ask questions of. And then you've got a few hours before the show where you're getting the show prepared. And then you've got a couple of hours after the show where you're getting the next day's show organised. So I've got a new task to do pretty much every 5 minutes. And that's great, because I don't need to worry about sitting getting bored. And that's where I get into trouble. It's when I have to actually sit still and put my mind to something that would take longer. So it's a really good job. And I think what is really interesting after you sort of start delving into this space is realizing just how many people in media have ADHD. And one of my friends who has ADHD said to me, do you know what? I reckon all journalists do. And I think there's probably an element of that, because I don't know, I think when you say broadcasting, people think, oh, you're in a sort of celeb-y job or a glamorous job. But actually, I think most of us are just in it because we're really nosy and we don't like sitting still. And we're not good at doing one thing once for a long time. And with radio, some days you'll have an amazing day. Some days you'll have a terrible day. But it kind of doesn't really matter. It's the same with newspapers. Anything in journalism, you're on to the next thing more or less before you finish that. So it kind of suits really well if you've got a brain like we do.
Definitely. I've noticed that myself because I've taken a bit of a career shift from previously I was what we call client side, which was fantastic in so many ways. But having gone to consultancy now where I get to nosy into lots of different organizations, meet different people all the time, different industries, it does definitely pique the interest in a different way.
Absolutely. And I mean, if you've got one of those brains that fires by sort of dealing with new things, it's a godsend to be in a job where you get to do that all day long because you never get bored.
Definitely.
I think sometimes these very like creative type jobs still come with a heavy side portion of having to be organised and having to be in charge of things that aren't as fun and as exciting. Whereas actually to be able to like carve that niche, one thing that I've found has just been like so important to my survival, not even me thriving, is just being really kind of very specific on what it is that I do want to do and absolutely deleting everything else. You can't always do that with every job.
No, you're making your own little world right now, which I think a lot of people do. I know the group that you've set up for Fast Brain Women.
Nice
little plug there. Yeah, I think that's what we're experiencing a lot. There's a lot of people who have been corporate and now looking to pursue their own things, more interest-based, which is a lot of the battle, isn't it?
Yeah. You mentioned something about like looking back. So like looking back, Jen, over time, because you're 20, 21, 22 now, something over the past 20 odd years.
Double it and you're about there.
What have been some real kind of like key moments that now, having understood how your brain is a little bit faster than the most typical brains, what are those moments that make the most sense to you?
I think even just the way I studied for exams and stuff like that, very last minute for everything. I need a deadline to function. And, we talk a lot about how we sort of self-select or find our coping strategies and find our own ways around. And like you're saying about being organised, like I live and die by my Trello board and my paper diary. I can't do digital diaries, too many email accounts, all of that stuff. I'll just get lost in the mire. So I've got my paper diary and I've got my Trello boards for work. And if it's not on there, it doesn't exist. Like I've got to be really single-minded with that stuff. But everything else, it's like it needs to have a deadline. If it's not got a deadline, I'm nowhere. And so for exams, for school, university, it was always, I was cramming. And all my report cards, looking back, they're all the same. It's like chatterbox, bright, coasting. And I think I did. I suppose, touch wood, I was very lucky that I was smart enough that I could get by with that. But I do, on the one hand, sort of look back now and go, gosh, what could I have done if I'd actually applied myself? But on the other hand, I guess knowing that I was deadline driven in that way and knowing that I always wanted to be doing new things and learning new things and that I just liked soaking things up as quickly as possible, it kind of led me to where I'm at. So no regrets on it, but I do think that once you get a diagnosis as an adult, it does make you look back on a lot of things that you did when you were younger and go, oh okay, that makes sense.
Definitely.
Yeah, I had a conversation. I posted on my LinkedIn that, Fast Brain Women and what it was all about. I felt it was like a career update. And my old flatmates in uni, my ride and dies, love these ladies, all commented on this post. So Nuala, my lovely Irish roomie, next door neighbour, commented how useful I was during exam times because I was like, the notes, the studying, everything was there. My other flatmate made a comment about my messiness. So yeah, I think there's definitely those moments. What was it that kind of pushed you to get a diagnosis? Because I think a lot of the time we find that it's comes from a place of like struggle. I don't think everyone like waltzes into a diagnosis like feeling top of the world.
Dish one out to me.
Just like, this is another certificate I can get. This is another hobby I want to take at the box.
Do you know, it's funny, there was no big light bulb moment, but I suppose the joy of doing the job that I do is that you see the trends. You see the things that people are talking about. And over COVID, I was back in the UK. I used to live in Dubai. I went home for 5 years. I came back again. I mean, there's a whole ADHD story in there, I'm sure. But I did the boomerang thing, and for 5 years I was back in the UK and I ran my own publication. And every time that I would put out calls for pitches, I would have more and more women pitching stuff around ADHD. And eventually I got somebody to write a story about her ADHD diagnosis in her 40s. And reading it, I just kind of was going, tick, 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 tick. And so I guess it was kind of in the back of my mind. And then my son is a great kid, does really well in school, but there's little things about him that are very like I was when I was a kid. And I was sort of looking at him and going, this seems like maybe there's little bits of ADHD. And I've never had him diagnosed, but there were things that he was doing that I was thinking, oh, that ties in with this and that ties in with that. And then eventually it just kind of hits that critical mass. So there was no sort of big defining moment where I went, oh, that's me. But I think it was just a sort of drip, drip, drip of becoming more aware of the conversation, of speaking to more people that were in that place and going, oh, there's a lot of mirrors shining back at me here. And what was really interesting is that the first doctor I went to see to find out about diagnosis basically poo-pooed me the minute I said that I had started looking at it with regards to my son. Because when I walked in the office and he said, do you have children? I said, yes, I do. He said, who? Boys, girls? I said, I had a boy. And he was like, what's he like? And I said, oh, lively, sporty, ants in his pants, really smart kid, but, doesn't like to sit still. And he was like, oh, okay, so you're one of those parents. And I went, oh, okay. And basically what he was saying is there were loads of mums coming in. Mums, he was very specific. There were loads of mums coming in who he felt were trying to go through the diagnostic process themselves so that they could see what it was like to protect their children. And he effectively sort of chased me off and went, seems to me like you have anxiety, but if you want to get your son diagnosed, I would suggest that you speak to someone who's a specialist in children's ADHD because it's not going to be the same process for him as you. And I was sort of like, oh, okay. Because I have at that point, and still to this point, I've not looked into getting my son diagnosed with anything because he's doing very well. And if he has struggles in the future, then so be it. It was just that he was part of my thinking process.
Just like part of the pattern.
Yeah, but just very much even just mentioning him, that first doctor was like, no.
Wow,
and I think then I kind of really got the bit between my teeth where I was like, well, I'll show you. Yeah. So I went to another doctor who kind of took 2 looks at me and went, oh, yeah, yeah, no doubt. And what was hilarious to me is that my mum is one of those people who... on Monty Python, the guy that's got like no arms and no legs, and he's like, it's a flesh wound. That's my mother. She could be missing a leg and she won't take a paracetamol.
Yeah.
And when I said to them, I've been diagnosed with ADHD, I thought they'd be like, oh, nonsense. And they both just went, oh, yeah, we could have told you that. And I went, hang on, what? And Mum and Dad both just laughed and they were like, well, yeah, obviously. And I said, really? Like, did it not occur to you to say anything to me? And they went, well, it didn't exist in our consciousness when you were a kid. But, I mean, we've had that conversation now that we know what it is. It's like, oh, yeah, that's Jen. Because, when I was a kid, they were like, oh, we always talk about you were a good kid, but there were parents who didn't want to pick you up from nursery because they didn't want to cross the road for you because you were always off in your own world and you didn't want to walk with people and you were always running ahead. And I had no idea about any of that, didn't remember any of it. But, yeah, Mum and Dad, not remotely surprised.
How do you think you would have, or what would have been different had you have known earlier?
This is one I've thought about quite a bit because obviously, a lot of us do talk about, there's traits with our own children. And I don't know if my son's got ADHD or if he's just my kid. He acts like me in certain ways. But I'm not in any rush to go and get him checked because as much as there are things I look back on now and think, yeah, that would have been easier. I also think that to a certain degree, if you'd have told me as a kid that I had some sort of excuse to get me out of the boring stuff, I'd have taken any avenue you'd have given me to get me out of maths. Like, oh, sorry, can't do that. No. So I'm, for me, it was more just about getting answers at this stage than it was about trying to fix anything. I don't think even now looking back that I would say there's anything about me that's broken. And I think what's really interesting when you read more about ADHD, I'm not going to sit here and go, oh, it's my superpower, because it does cause difficulties. But equally, I don't know that I would be who I was or necessarily doing what I do in the world if I hadn't grown up having to navigate around the things that I guess the roadblocks that I put in my own way. So I don't know that I would have wanted to have been diagnosed any earlier. There's definitely things from earlier adulthood that I think, oh yeah, it probably would have been helpful to have known then. There's mistakes I wouldn't have made maybe in my 20s, and that would have been potentially helpful.
But some skeletons here we could dig up. Do we push?
Many skeletons. But I don't think a childhood diagnosis would necessarily have served me well. And even now, it's kind of like it's more just giving answers to questions that I had rather than necessarily changing anything, because I guess I've kind of coping strategied my way into quite a good place anyway.
And we do that very well, I think. One, women, two,
that's why we're harder
women.
to identify, right? We blend in.
Yeah, and I think it is just, like, you know, we have to cope. There's no other reason. That's a really, like, lovely way of thinking about it, because actually you didn't have a choice. You were there just showing up, school, you know, whatever it was, and just getting things done. Because sometimes I was talking about this, I think, the other day to someone, and I think it was in our like goal setting when we talked about like the concept of discipline, which I think is like, it's quite a masculine, negative-y kind of word. But sometimes we do need some kind of, I don't know what the alternative word is. Please just comment below of alternatives. Or maybe I should chat GPT it. I don't know. Just to really have that ability to rise through it, not necessarily above it sometimes. We do need to crack on.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's about staying goal focused and realizing that the methods or notebook or Trello board that works for you this week might not work in a month's time, because sometimes it's a novelty of having a new method for me that works. So keep your eyes on the prize, because sometimes you can't just give up on maths. Like you say, you have to push yourself through it one way or another. But yeah, using different tools to get you there might be another way.
Yeah, I was like, would it have been different for you if you'd have known as a child?
I mean, I think my self-perception would have been different. I've definitely beaten myself up over the years. You know, Lorna talks too much, and, you know, she leaves everything till last minute. She has so much potential. She's not reaching it. I was like, well, I'm just a disaster, you know. Oh, ditzy me, and I'm not actually ditzy. I'm actually quite intelligent, but the traits. So I think my self-perception is now something that I'm healing and wouldn't have had to do so much healing from had I had that frame. But it was also a different era. So I don't know what support would have been available as well, especially as a girl. Well,
I don't think it really existed 20-something years ago.
Yeah. I mean, I definitely
girls
heard of Ritalin for, you know, boys who jumped on tables.
Boys
it was
who jumped
that
on
sort of
tables,
thing.
But it was
exactly,
boys.
yeah.
It was boys and it was children. You know, it was adult ADHD wasn't a thing. Female ADHD wasn't a thing. This is definitely something that's, you know, that's why so many women coming out of the woodwork now being like, oh, box ticked. You know, whether it's a radio show that I listen to or a, you know, TikTok or a reel where things start making sense. Being like, oh.
I think as well there's like these big kind of, I almost want to call them regeneration moments in a woman's life. And the doctor who eventually said to me, have you ever thought you might be ADHD, was my menopause doctor. Because I had really bad endometriosis and adenomyosis throughout my 20s and 30s. And I eventually had a hysterectomy in my 30s. So I went into really early menopause as a result of that. And so when I moved back to Dubai and started seeing my menopause doctor, I had been sort of through COVID kind of effectively raw dogging menopause in my 30s, which was not a lot of fun. And when I came to her, she's got a sort of symptoms checklist, and I just basically ticked everything. And then after kind of a few months of taking HRT, it was better, but there were still a few things. And then eventually, after a year of being on the HRT and tweaking things, I felt fantastic. And the only things that I was still ticking on the list were sort of mental health symptoms. So it was sort of restless brain, insomnia, sleeplessness, anxiety. And it was my menopause doctor who went, your hormone levels are great now. This isn't hormones. Have you thought that it might be ADHD? And of course, this had been sort of percolating in the back of my mind before then anyway. But she said to me, the times that we're now seeing women being diagnosed are either around pregnancy, when your hormones are in flux. It's because you've got a little kid who you see it in them and then you see it in yourself. Or it's around menopause, because those times of life where you're sort of almost becoming a different person. Your hormone levels are in flux, your sense of self is in flux, and your coping strategies go completely out the window. Yeah. And she was like, and that's where it really that's where we're seeing it a lot. And that made a lot of sense to me. And actually, yeah, it's completely right, because my hormone levels were grand at that point, but there were still these things where I was like, well, why isn't it fixing this?
We're going to take just a quick ADHD-friendly pause. And if you're listening to this while multitasking, then this is most definitely for you, so listen up. The Endel app is honestly my secret weapon to getting things done. It's a sound wellness app that creates these personalized soundscapes designed to help your brain do what it's meant to be doing in that moment. I use it every single day, and whether I'm locking in, focusing, or just wanting to fall asleep at a human hour, it's Endel that gets me there. These guys are such big supporters of the ADHD community, and they're giving you a whole month to try it for free. So you can find the link in the description, or send us a DM wherever on our socials if you can't find it, and we will send it to you. And if you got distracted along the way, even during this little short break, we have gifted you a lovely 5-minute relaxing soundscape from Endel at the end of this episode. So stick around and enjoy.
I think this is such an important topic, even on a monthly basis. Our hormones are changing all the time, and I think because we expect such fluctuation in moods and energy levels already, I think we gaslight ourselves a bit into being like, this is normal, I'll feel better after my next period, or you know, and even things like your period can affect how your medication works as well. So there's so many layers to this that women are essentially different people throughout the month. It must be very hard, actually. I'm trying to give the medical profession a break for not recognising us all earlier, but it is complex when you start layering those different things in there compared to men.
Absolutely, and it changes the way that you deal with things through your life as well, which I guess makes it harder to be a sort of constant awareness of and as you say, your coping strategies, you know, they'll change as you go on. But then, you know, now, like you're saying, there are things that change and ways of coping that change and different times of the month where you need different things. But it's like there's certain non-negotiables for me now that I know I've got ADHD. Like if I wake up at 6 o'clock in the morning and I don't want to go to the gym, I will have to force myself to. But I now go to the gym every morning before work because I know that I function better as an employee, as a wife, as a mother, as a human being. If I've gotten that kind of burst of energy out of myself first thing in the morning, I function better. But for years and years and years, I was sort of vaguely aware that when I exercised, I felt better, but I wouldn't do it. I wouldn't motivate myself to do it. And now it's like I have to really be quite regimented, as you say, quite disciplined about that, because I know that if I don't go, I will be a worse person later in the day for it.
This is where the discipline comes in,
exactly.
Right?
But I was where was the tipping? Asking for a friend. Where was the tipping point in that kind of self-awareness though? Like, was there a Jen before that didn't go to the gym every morning and, you know, got dragged along by the days, was a terrible employee, mother, wife, everything above, and like then you were able to but then you were able to see what worked for you. Like, where did that like tipping point of?
I mean, again, the same doctor, she was adamant, like, you can take the HRT, you can take ADHD medication, you can do whatever you want, but exercise is now a non-negotiable for you. You were very young when you went into menopause, you need to look after your bones, you need to look after your muscles. So she was hassling me. But again, because I'd had that surgery and I'd had hormone issues and all the rest of it, for years I'd had chronic pain. And when I was younger, I actually trained as a dancer before I trained as a journalist. And so I'd always been really fit and healthy growing up. And then because I had all these health and hormone issues and all through the years, exercise had been on a real back burner. So I think it's been part of a whole picture of feeling healthier and feeling better and feeling physically able to exercise. But I do think that it's one of those habits that for me, if I get out of it, it'll very easily fall by the wayside. You know, like taking a week's holiday over Christmas when my family were visiting, trying to go back to the gym after that, you're like, oh really? I don't wanna. But like I know that I have to be disciplined, because that for me has as big an impact on my mental well-being as the drugs do. And if I forget to put my drugs in my bag one day, I can get through a day without my medication. But if I forgot to take my medication and I hadn't been to the gym, I'm useless by 2 p.m.
Yeah, and I really like that holistic approach, because some people will say, you know, it's just a get out of jail free card, take your medication, you know, there's a pill for everything type thing. But actually, it's still an ongoing effort. It's not a magic bullet. We discussed this, you know, just that it takes the squirrels down from 20 to 2.
Yeah. and then you've got 5 of them again pretty soon. Like at the beginning when you take the drugs, it's like, it's like that Wizard of Oz, like the colour comes on moment, and you're like, is this how normal people's brains work? Yeah. And then after a couple of weeks, you're like, okay, now I'm kind of used to them.
Yeah.
That's, you know, it's still colour, but it's not glorious technicolor anymore. And so you kind of, it gives you that kick, doesn't it? But you still need to actually sort your own coping mechanisms out over and above. The drugs don't do it all.
Tell me a little bit about what else you do other than exercise to keep Jen on track.
My very dear colleague / work wife saw I was having a rough week recently and bought me a sweary words colouring book and some pens. I was very grateful for that. I have been doing a lot of sweary word colouring at home, which my husband and now my son, who has learned some new vocabulary from my colouring, think is hilarious.
Colourful vocabulary.
Lego.
Vocabulary.
Lego I really enjoy.
Yes.
Lego I can get lost in.
Lego sets or free play?
No, sets. It's got to be a set. I've got to follow the instructions. Like, I love building IKEA. I love if you give me a set of instructions and I have to just do it. I built myself a set of shelves at the weekend. That was one of those ones where I woke up on Sunday and I went, I need to organise my bags. I need to get some shelves today. And my husband was like, goody, an ADHD adventure day, is it? And I was like, yes. And I went and bought the shelves and I built them and I organised my handbags and I lint rollered the inside of all my handbags and they were all lined up by the end of the day. And he was just like, whatever.
I love that hyper-focus on one category.
Yeah, that's it.
Brilliant at that.
Yeah, really good at the hyper-focus. I don't drink as well, and I think that's been a really crucial bit of the mental health puzzle for me. And that was a long time before my diagnosis. I actually, it was an anniversary recently because I gave up in January and I didn't intend to give up drinking. It just kind of stuck. I did that. I'm going to do a month with everybody else, and then at the end of the month went, there might be something to this. And it's been 6 years now.
Wow.
But that I think was a big part of the puzzle for me. Was that I think I never was a problem drinker. I wasn't a huge everyday drinker or anything like that, but I think I would definitely use it to silence the noise at sort of stressful times when I was younger. And there's a certain terror, I think, after a while of always having that on hand to having to feel your feelings. Yeah. But once you get used to it, I've realised it's just so much better for my personal mental health and sort of anxiety levels and stuff like that if I just don't add that into the mix. So not drinking's been a big part of it. Eating well most of the time.
I mean, I find that amazing. And I think, we're in the Middle East and a lot of people won't relate to this, but drinking is part of our culture in a way that it's just part of everyday life. It's not that you're expected to do it, but it's just something you grow up with. So to step away from that is a bigger deal than a lot of people realise. And I know it's a choice that you've made as well. I'm saying that, obviously, as someone who's not participated in this but knows it's the right thing to do. But
then it's not motivating if it's the right thing to do. So, I don't know, maybe I definitely didn't accidentally give up. Mine was extremely intentional after the worst hangover that's ever been known to man. At one point, I would have been okay if I didn't survive it. I wanted out. I think I got home at 7 a.m. and the kids were like, it was bad. It was
my God, you were a mum as well.
I know, it was the worst.
I can almost feel the headache.
So I think I needed that as my springboard. But kind of one thing that you were saying that I highly relate, which I feel that, sorry, this might be a bit of a spoiler alert, but when I stopped drinking, I felt worse.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I just thought it was going to be this magical, utopia when I got there, that I would like feel better, look better, like my world would all come together, career. No.
Did you think you would lose about 6 stone and then discover that you gained it because what you didn't drink, you ate in cake? Or was that just me?
I don't know I think I was already eating the cake and the drink, so I think that was that wasn't necessarily just the one. But yeah, definitely thought that I was going to lose weight. Definitely thought that things were just going to be like clearer. But it was just so evident over time that it was just a coping mechanism. It was the one thing that I could let loose, go wild, not care, do the dance moves that I've been wanting to do all week, but felt too shy to do them. All of those things, like the social occasions, the social anxiety, like the overwhelm, the noise, the insert, other million things here. And taking that away, it's like the blanket got stripped from underneath me, and I was raging. Like I just could not believe that's what I was left with. So yeah, feeling the feelings, having to, really figure out how it's such a big part of culture and how you grow up, and
really selling it to me as well.
There are positives.
Yeah, no, I don't doubt it. I'm working through my own demons. I've given up various things this year, and it's about, what do you replace it with? And you can even go the other way with like exercise. That can become your holy grail, and the other thing that you can use to push down your emotions. So I think we've all got to do the work, right? Regardless of what crutches you add and remove along the way, you still got to unpack all of that at the end of the day, which is the
feeling your feelings, but
yeah.
Sucks.
Ew. Yeah. So tell us a little bit about the actual diagnosis, because you had that horrible experience. It's a miracle you didn't just walk away from the whole process after that first doctor. Then you had your menopause doctor who said, go get this checked out. What actually is the process here in the UAE? Or what was it like for you, I should say, because it might have been different for all of us. This is where we uncover.
So my menopause doctor recommended a psychiatrist who specialised in adult ADHD. And so I contacted him. They did a short telephone call, spoke to me about why I wanted to look into it. Then they sent me a big long test form, which I completed the night before my appointment.
That was part of the criteria, I assume.
Yeah. They should have actually put on the front page, how close to your appointment are you completing this? And that probably would have been enough.
In the waiting room.
I left it, a week and a half, and then did it the hours before my appointment, or before it was due. And aced that test. It was, I walked in and they were kind of like, so, newsflash. And he spoke to me about medication, and I was kind of really reluctant. Again, as I said, having grown up with a mum who, had to lose an arm to sort of consider Calpol, the idea of medicating anything has always felt a bit like, oh, do I have to? But it was a game changer, I think, at first. It made me realise, I think just taking it made me realise how much that chatter in my head was playing into things. And taking the medication and getting a little bit of peace from that and a little bit of distance from it made me realise how much of the sort of negative self-talk or the rejection sensitivity and sort of ruminating on things, that thing where it's like, I can't remember your phone number that you told me 30 seconds ago, but I will wake up at 2 a.m. and remember in minute detail that stupid thing I did when I was 17, kind of the rumination that goes on in my brain was massive. And I think taking the medication and having those initial early periods where it's really dramatic and it kind of gives you a break from that helped me to recognise it. And although now I don't take the medication every day, and at the weekend I don't take it, and we've had so many supply issues here. I've tried 3 different ones, and there have been occasions where I've not had any, or I've had to half my dose or whatever it is. So I've not taken it every day or taken one consistently since then. But it was like it just turned a light on to the things that were ADHD that I maybe hadn't been fully aware of. And so now I can recognise them. So it's not like they go away.
Yeah.
But now when I find myself ruminating, or I find myself being, like I had it yesterday where I was like, oh, they sent me that message late. Was that because they weren't going to invite me to that thing? Was I not going to be doing that? And then you go, what does it matter? Like, you start to recognise it a bit better.
Yeah.
So I think that's been the big kind of change for me, has been just being able to recognise the things that they'll probably always be there, and they'll probably always be a hindrance, and there'll be days where they'll really, really bug me. But it makes a bit more sense, I guess.
Has it changed how people around you perceive you?
I don't think so, but I think we're pack animals.
Right?
You realise how many people you know.
We can add that to the
What
call.
was hilarious is that after I got diagnosed, my husband started going, that all sounds a bit familiar. And then he got a diagnosis. It's like, oh, see, I knew I liked you. You're one of us. Like, I think, lots of my friends, loads of people in my industry, you realise that there's a lot of us about.
How does it work being married to someone else? Because I always see my husband as the yin to my woo-woo.
Yeah, we did the same. We opted for simplicity.
Well, yeah. I mean...
Not simple. I'm not calling myself simple, but like...
You just call our husband simple, then I can appreciate that.
Edit that.
We found people, I think, that balanced us out. It sounds like you've got... I mean, are you similar? Do you struggle with the same things, or does it present differently in the pair of you?
There's definitely more... I think we're... First and foremost, he's like my best mate. And I think I had a practice marriage, and that did not go well. So second time around, like, I know that he's my guy and he's the right person for me. And so there's things that we're very similar on, there's things that we're quite different on. But for the most part, I think he is quite similar to me in the sense that he'd already worked out a lot of his coping mechanisms. He's very organised with certain things. Like, I mean, it's quite hilarious to me how organised he is at times. Like, when we started going out and my son was 5, and very quickly, Rich, my husband, would be the one that Arthur would go to if he needed a tissue or a plaster or a wet wipe or whatever it was, because he would always have the things. Like, he's Captain Organised, whereas I'm the chaos merchant. So we complement each other in that way, in the sense that we've both kind of worked out our coping mechanisms differently. So he'll be the one who will be really organised on certain things, and there's other things that he's a bit more chaotic with. I'm more chaotic on most things.
Okay, so
but I can kind of pick up his slack. So between the two of us, we work it out. But I think it's he always felt very safe to me, and I think that's a big part of why, because I think he gets how my brain works and I get how his brain works.
Yeah,
and that made sense before either of us had a diagnosis, but it makes a lot more sense now, knowing that we're both actively, like, do have very similar working brains.
Yeah,
so cute.
It is. Like, the safety is like so important, whether it's like, for a child or for a partner or for a friend. And like, God bless him, my simple husband, the one thing that he has done,
she's sticking with it,
he has just doubled down on the research. And he's reading another book now just to like understand, because both me and my son have pretty wild ADHD, and that conflict and not backing down, like, you can almost see like Gil in the background, just like not knowing between me and Harvey, like where to jump in, like, do I let them go? So that has definitely helped the sort of safety side of it.
What I found wild though was that despite having ADHD, Rich doesn't have the monologue, which I didn't even realise until quite recently that some people don't. Like, I thought everybody had that, like the constant sort of inside your head narrator, but apparently not.
My husband literally said to me last night, I couldn't sleep, and he was like, tell those voices in your head to shut up. And it's like, it's not like I have people talking, but yeah, there's noise for sure. Yeah. And then you start telling the story in your head and connecting all the dots internally, and then you continue the conversation with the person with zero context, and they're like, I'm not we're not having the same conversation.
That happens.
Yeah.
That happens.
So we're asking all of our guests, for sort of your top 3 life hacks, resources, what's something useful that you'd like to give back to the ADHD community that you think maybe has helped you or will help someone else?
Oh, mine are really boring. It is just like, it's trying to be as healthy as you can, exercise, getting outside. I really need to be much, much better at putting my phone down. I'm really bad at that. I would love for someone to give me the secret to that, but by and large, it's trying to sort of just live quite healthily has been the big change for me. Speak up, I guess, and realise that it's not a flaw. I don't know, really. I'm trying to think what else. Lego.
Yeah.
Do you know what really
anything
helped me?
little with like that keeps your hands busy. I find that's if it keeps my hands busy and they're not on my phone, it helps keep my mind quiet. So anything that kind of occupies my hands. You sent me a fidget toy when I first got diagnosed, and that really helped me as well. Anything that kind of keeps your hands busy.
It helps me focus on the TV, which sounds like a crazy thing to say, but it's very hard to sit and watch TV without doing something with your hands, which
really
is why you end up
true,
with the 2 screens. Or
Yeah.
so a lot of people
Rubik's cubes, anything like that, fidget toys, anything that keeps your hands busy, keeps you off your phone is good, because the phone will do the devil's work with my brain very quickly, very, very quickly.
Anarchy. Great. Well, thank you so much. It's been an amazing conversation. Found out so much more layers and depth to you, and I'm dying to meet your husband now. He sounds like an absolute gem.
Yeah.
He's ace.
I'll console your husband for that. You called him simple twice. And know you love him dearly.
I do. God bless him. So, thank you so much for joining us. We will be back with an episode very shortly and continuing this crazy, chaotic conversation. Let's see where it goes.
And that's a wrap. Thanks for hanging out with us today. Before you dive back into the chaos, we've got a 5-minute relaxing end-all soundscape to help you reset, unwind, or just stare into space guilt-free. If you love this episode, it would mean the absolute world to us and also ease our rejection sensitivity. If you hit subscribe, share it with a fast-brain friend, or if you loved it, leave us a quick review. Take a breath, stay wild, and enjoy until the next episode of Fast Brain Women.